Hello, I'm Aidan Moran and welcome to Brave Talks. And I'm thrilled to have Autumn Reid here today to talk to us. And Autumn, I know this is a difficult question, but who is Autumn?
We're starting with philosophical questions then. Okay, fine. It's going to be the hardest question that I probably have to answer today. So, like I said, my name's Autumn. I am a non-binary person. I'm grey gender to be more specific, and I am a program director here. Who I actually am is a massive nerd. Um, I've been doing things like dream hacking and game streaming for years, and also involved in a lot of work around accessibility in my off time because I'm glutton for punishment. And my actual professional career has mostly been based in the civil service and to do with tech and project management. That is who I am in a nutshell, though.
So, what do you think the biggest challenges organisations face for inclusion?
So, one of the things that I've found, especially throughout the civil service, is that inclusion is often paid a lot of lip service, but not built into processes as a standard. So rather than say, if you're going through like a software development cycle, let's just pull this out the air. You'll get to maybe a beta stage of it. Oh, we need to do some accessibility things. That should have been way back in discovery that we should have thought about those things, please. And because these things aren't built in as a standard, they're treated as an afterthought, which when you're doing that project after project, piece after piece, even on internal things, you're forgetting that the things that you're building, the things that you're implementing include such a range of people that you've automatically excluded it, like a huge portion of them, because you haven't built in inclusion and accessibility in the early stages of everything that you do. And that's a culture thing. And that's the hardest thing to break, especially in long standing sort of cultures, say in big organizations, big companies, where this sort of, I say, forward or progressive thinking, it's not really, it should be the standard, hasn't been included. And therefore, it requires you to kind of hammer it home a little bit that it needs to be there. It's not meant to be an afterthought. And it shouldn't be an issue when you get to the end of a project and suddenly all your tickets are filled with screen reader doesn't work with this, or nobody in this particular team can use it because they all have to use a particular type of software, which is accessibility aids, or down to things like, our BAs haven't done the research on this particular group of people because we didn't think it would be important when actually it's kind of central to it and we missed it. um Biggest thing is culture change, and it's the same everywhere. So and it doesn't happen overnight. You've really got to drive it home, find allies to help you drive it home as well. So, yeah.
So, what do you think organisations can do to be better?
With inclusivity, it's a case of nothing about us without us. And that is a phrase that was coined some time ago by equality and disability rights campaigners, in that if something is built for a specific group or includes a group, they should have input on what is being produced. With inclusivity, if you are only trying to obtain particular information from a particular subset, I'm going to generalize. Everybody above this particular senior management, they all happen to be men, they all happen to be white, they all happen to be sort of middle-aged, and they've all exclusively worked in this one industry. They've all been to university. Some of them will have postdocs, things like that. Where are the people who haven't had that socioeconomic advantage? Where are people who identify as women? Where are people who identify as neither, like me? Inclusivity is not just limited to things like sex, profession, gender. It has to expand to things like work-life divide, socioeconomic status, educational history, and the opportunities that have been presented within that stratosphere. Without including those, you're not hearing the important voices. So as a standard, look out when you're doing your inclusivity things, look outside that initial group of people that you want to, say, go to, and ensure that the people that you are talking to, it's an intersectionality. It's not just, we've got 5 people from here and 5 people from here, and that fulfills it. That's a small criteria. Maybe 5 people from this particular group with a subset of this, and maybe 5 from outside that group with another couple of characteristics on top. I think a lot of companies can be very blinkered when it comes to things like inclusivity in terms of equality and diversity, because they'll just see like homogenized group 1, homogenized group 2. Well, we've talked to 3 people who are gay, therefore we fulfilled our criteria. It doesn't work like that.
So why do you think organizations struggle so much?
And I'm going to use a civil service example again, with things like considering a wider subset of people, you get something that happens that's called groupthink, right? Where it becomes more difficult to consider an outsider's perspective. Because say if you have a group of people who have been involved in a particular, say, workplace culture for a number of years that shows no sign of changing, that particular group of people will be more inclined to agree with each other and not think about any other inferences outside of what they've, no, that must be right. It can't possibly be any other way. Well, why would that be a problem? Because groupthink happens, it encourages the status quo. And it also makes people who dissent less likely to speak up about any issues, any problems that they're having, because doing so would mean going up against that group and you're outnumbered. And that is particularly challenging for people like me, for a number of other people. You know, I am physically disabled, I am neurodiverse, and speaking up against hundreds of people who say, but there's not a problem. When you know there is a problem, you are experiencing the problem, but you can't really articulate to them what the problem is. They don't really want to hear it, because from their perspective and that little group's perspective, there isn't a problem. It's just a you problem. It's not, it's systemic, they just can't see it. They have no drive to see it because they haven't experienced it.
So how do you think we can help change that? Because I think what you're saying is so true, and you see it a lot. How can we do something different to help people see the benefits of this?
It entirely depends on the context of the problem. So say if somebody who is, let's pick me out of the bunch, I'm physically disabled. If there had been a management or methodology which could have identified up front, and it was something people were bringing up, that people with particular physical disabilities in a particular workplace setup, for example, would be excluded because they wouldn't be able to go above the 3rd floor. If accessibility had been built in to that sort of role management process, it would have been identified very early on, and preventative measures or countermeasures could have been taken. When you don't have inclusivity and things like equality impact assessments built into your processes as standard, these things will continue happening. It is super, super important to have your equality and diversity, inclusivity, your accessibility built in to everything that you do as a first port of call. Without that, my problems, loads of other people's problems will continue happening. I cannot stress enough how awful it feels to be singled out because you are an afterthought of a process that caters to 50, 60, 70% of other people because they don't have your specific problem. And that's a very isolating and lonely place to be, especially when lip service is paid. Say, oh, but we're a two-tick employer, if you're familiar with what two-tick employers are, disability sort of friendly, was credited by the government. All that actually means is we don't really have a lot of active discrimination going on, but it doesn't mean that they're putting inclusivity and accessibility at the forefront of the processes. And it's the one key thing. That culture has got to be nothing about them without them, and build it in a standard.
So you mentioned inclusivity. And I think it kind of plays to, if you've got that inclusivity, you've got a very diverse group of people. So what do you think the power of having that diversity is to any organization?
Oh, diversity. Diversity is it's the bedrock for growth and innovation and new ways of thinking and doing things. There's such stagnation when you've got homogenized groups with no real flavor, no real. You need the world view of other people, the lived experience of other people, the challenges from other people that you might not have any knowledge of because it has been your lived experience. Those lived experience from various people give you insight into different worlds. It's not just how companies grow, it's how people grow. You need those shared experiences as human beings to understand each other better. And if you understand each other better, your communication improves. When communication improves, you start talking, doing new things. You start exploring new ideas and new ways of doing things. So important. Because when you get stuck in that, it's always the way we've done it. This is the way we've always done this thing. It works. You stagnate.
Absolutely. Well, it helps with the innovation, doesn't it?
It does.
It's amazing. So what made you want to do Brave Talks?
Chris Hartley. So Chris Hartley is my manager, and I have ADHD as well. And I thought, you know what, I can probably waffle on about this kind of thing for hours. But I've now got the ability to talk on a platform, and I feel I have it within my power to do so, so I should. Because there will be other people that me 12 months ago might have gone, no, absolutely not. I have the power to perhaps help somebody who's in a sticky situation, a bad position at the minute, who maybe just wants to hear, oh God, I know what they're talking about. Oh, someone hears us, someone hears us. Sometimes that's all you need. And it's something very near and dear to me, being, physically disabled, I have a neurodevelopmental condition. I have been treated very poorly by previous workplaces in some places. And if I've got the power to help change that in any capacity, I have to do it. I have to. So I'm here.
That's great. So what are the most misunderstood concepts when discussing inclusion?
So one of them is this idea of equality. Don't jump out your seat when I say that's misunderstood. So I've always said that it's not about equality, it's about equity. Because, for example, and this is pulled from an image which made its way around the internet recently-ish in the grand context of things. There are three people trying to look over a fence to look at something. And these people, one's fairly short, one's fairly tall, and the other one is sort of middling height. Now, if you give them all the same box to look over that wall, sure, the tall person just needs a little bit of a boost to see over it. The person who's sort of average height gets the box, can see over it. The shortest person who's got the box still can't see over the wall. But you've given them all the same resources. Yes, we've given them all the same resources, but they're working from a position which means they're still disadvantaged and might need more help. So when looking at things like diversity, inclusion, accessibility, it's important to approach things from an equitable point of view rather than a stance of equality, because everybody needs individualized support. Whether this is in the workplace, at home, whether this is to do with education, socioeconomic statuses, it's really important to keep in mind that it's all about the individual.
Kind of related to the neurodiversity as well, what are kind of one of the challenges or benefits of being neurodiverse in a kind of neurotypical world?
Oh, so there are blessings and there are curses. One of the blessings is that with the way that my brain works, and a bunch of my other friends' brains, the way they process things, we can pick things up really quickly and find better ways of doing them. They might not always align with what other people think it should be, but we find novel ways of doing things. We find better ways of doing things. We find more comfortable ways of doing things. And yeah, okay, some people, like I said before, with the culture, but we've always done it like this. We can normally bring people around to a point and say, this is why this has a benefit of doing it this way. If we're told no, we'll probably still find another way to get around that and do it the way that we need to do it because we're stubborn. But then counter to that, everything that we do is built for neurotypicals. So we have to find a way around things. If we don't, we're sort of doomed to do things in a particular way that doesn't suit us and doesn't help us grow. Whether that's, anything from household tasks to education to office to what you do in your leisure time. So with ADHD or ASD or similar, we find details in things that can help us and help other people, and it helps us reinvent things that maybe could need a bit of improvement.
And if you had something to say to someone that's struggling to kind of understand their uniqueness and communicate that to others, what would you say?
It's like talking to a younger me. What I'd say to them is, not everybody's going to understand you. That's okay. Not everybody needs to understand you. If you are struggling to be heard and understood, find yourself an ally. And I know it sounds simple and trite. Find someone you can sit down and have a good old gab with. It's not that they can do anything about it. It's getting it out there and feeling heard. And if you have an ally, they will be willing to sit there and listen to you. And at that point, when it's out of you, you can form an action plan. And if you have allies around you in your workplace, your family, your friends, whomever, you can formulate an attack plan to try and get what you need out of what you're seeking. But it's probably part of the ADHD, ASD, I'm not sure. It is incredibly frustrating to try to explain something, to be understood. And they're looking at you like you got two heads, like you're speaking another language that they don't, like you're an alien. It's like, how can I explain this in a way that makes sense to you? Sometimes you're not going to be able to, and that is okay. It's not a failing on your part. It's not because you're broken or you're weird or you're strange. They don't get it. You get it, you're fine. If they don't understand it, we'll try and find a different way of explaining it, but it's not a failing on your part.
I think that's an amazing message to finish on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching, and check back to see more Brave Talks in the future.